You can explain what they mean, always answer what the test used for, what the variable analyzed, the result significant, what does it mean in real life. With descriptive statistics, you do for descriptive statistics. Now you check for you analyze for the descriptive statistics, you analyze for mean and standard deviation. Do not use absolute value in this position. As we have said, you don't need the absolute value. Do not use absolute value here. Like when we are dealing with mean and standard deviation, you don't need absolute value. But the significant rule, most important, the p-value, that's when p-value is less than 0.05. The significance, there is a significance in there is a statistical significance in the result. But when p is greater than or equals to 0.05, there is no significance. When it is greater than or equals to 0.05, there is no significance. Take note of that. So the correlation relationship between variable, you look at the correlation coefficient and check for absolute. So you see how to interpret the value to the absolute value is the strength, while the sign is the direction, of the relationship between the variables. So 0.0 to 0.029 is weak, and 0.3 to 0.59 is moderate. 0.6 to 1 is strong. There is a strong negative relationship between a stress, or maybe you have it to be, you see, there is a strong, you see, when it is a 0.6 and there is a negative beside it, will be 0.6. When there is, okay, from 0.00 to 0.2, there is a weak negative. If it is minus 0.29, it will be weak negative relationship between the two variables. So, and you test for ANOVA. When you are comparing with two groups, you check for the mean value and the p-value between two variables. And when you have ANOVA, that's between three or more groups. So that's for ANOVA. So no absolute value use. You check for the regression, that's the prediction. That's what you use to predict. It's used to predict the outcomes of, okay, maybe probably predicting, as you have said, between weight. You use it to predict the weight, or you use it to predict the price of something. So you interpret by the sign. You know the sign. When you know the sign and you check for the absolute value, you use it to interpret just the sign and the absolute value. The study hypothesis predict the mark with strong effect of this, and we check for absolute value. When to use the absolute value is only for correlation and regression. Do not use absolute value for mean, standard deviation. You don't need absolute value for p-value and variance inflation factor 2. Absolute value is the strength, and the sign is the direction. So take note of that too. Collinearity. When the variance inflation factor is greater than 5, there's no problem. When you have it to be 5 to 10, moderate problem, like there is a multicollinearity presence in the regression, and multicollinearities always affect the regression only. And when you have it to be greater than 10, there is serious problem. To be greater than 10, there is serious problem. There is serious multicollinearity. There is serious all variance inflation factor value below 5 indicate no multicollinearity. If multicollinearity exists, do not trust the beta. That's the beta, the regression beta. You do not trust it. You do not rely on the beta. So interpret regression with caution. When you have when there is multicollinearity. So final interpretation, like maybe you have a template. So we have a template there. The analysis conducted using this blah blah blah. When you have your statistics, you don't need to write everything like that. So the result shows a statistic when you have a p-value to be less than 0.05, but when you have it to be greater than greater than or equal to 0.05, you said that the result shows no statistical significant relationship or difference. Although relationship is positive or negative, that's for correlation. When you know the time for strong positive and negative correlation, and weak positive correlation or negative correlation, and you have moderate positive or negative correlation. The absolute, and you see the absolute value is for regression. So the absolute value indicates there is a moderate or strong effect. That's what we call predictors. Predicting, that's what you use to predict. The next thing to, this is how to state it. You predict, and you check for the you do for descriptive, you do next for correlation, and you do next for regression, and you check for the multicollinearity. If there is no multicollinearity, no issue found. When the variance reflection factor is less than 5, so p-value is for significance. We have said this earlier. Absolute value is the strength, sign is the direction, variance reflection factor is multicollinearity. We have in the volume 4 the workflow that we can follow easy. So this is the last part. Volume 5 is the volume